Welcome to A Bit of Curiosity. Today we've got Joe Morton on here. He's an entrepreneur, founder, investor, endurance athlete, and he's an all-around positive person. Joe, by nature, is an entrepreneur who helped found Zango and Ultra Running, and we can get into that a little bit as we both have an affinity as founders of that company, but as well as his own podcast, Daily Cup of Joe. Growing up in a small town of Canada gave Joe a strong touch with reality. He's currently living in Utah with his wife and daughter, as he's sent his three sons out into the world already. So, together with his wife Karen, they've successfully helped start great companies that have helped thousands of people thrive. He's authored 2 books. He's passionate about life and everything that he puts his energy into. He's focused on finding the positivity in life and puts his effort into healthy lifestyle. He has successfully completed ultra marathons and several iron distance triathlons. So I'm excited to welcome Joe Morton here on the podcast. Joe, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing awesome. I wouldn't expect any less, right? Like that's what this is all about. So
Yeah, yeah.
the premise of our podcast really is to answer hard questions or big questions. Maybe this
hmm
isn't a hard question, but it's a big question that I definitely ponder, and I see it in you as knowing you now for almost 15 years, Joe. It's what like how do you stay so positive every day? Or is it a facade? Are we all tricked by the Joe Morton?
Okay, so I have a philosophy. I call it positive in. That's one of the books that I wrote. Does it mean that it's all perfect every day? No,
Sure.
Jeremy. I mean, I'm no different than everyone else. I mean, life happens, and and the process of life can either beat us down and make us jaded and angry and bitter, and we see that. I mean, it's happened to me in my life, which is partly why you actually came. You and I ended up meeting each other right around a time when that was actually starting to happen to me, and I had one of those moments, like, do I go this way and just continue to be angry and jaded? And it had been building for years, so it's not like it was like overnight.
Yeah.
It's just something that building over years. So, or do I take this path, which is try to learn and embrace what life brings you, and try to find the positive, despite the fact that it doesn't always go the way we planned and we don't want. But instead of seeing life is happening to me, life is happening. Instead, we start to see it as life is happening for me, if that makes
Absolutely. I love
sense.
that.
And
Yeah.
and it takes work to get to that point, Jeremy. I wish I could tell you that it's like, yeah, I had this moment in my life. It was like, hey, it's over and everything's perfect from this point forward, and I see the world perfectly. No, it takes work. At least for me. I'm talking from my perspective, Jeremy. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe there's some people out there that don't have to work at it, but I have to work at it. And so I work at it by feeding positive as much as possible uh, because if not, gravity's going to pull me the other way. And maybe I'm just a little more susceptible to the gravity pulling me, so I have to work at it that much harder. I don't know. But I have to work at it a little harder. And so I talk about it because in hopes that it might help someone else, because we're all on this journey. We're all on this freaking rock flying around the sun and trying to figure life out. And hopefully someone can, like, wow, I guess I'm not the only one that struggles with staying positive in a world that can be, if you listen to what the news is telling us, it can be kind of a negative place. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely. I appreciate that. So to you, it's essentially been a conscious mindset shift, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and I remember the first time we met. I don't know how much you remember that, but for me, it's always something that I sit back and laugh at a little bit because there's these 320 somethings. One because he was the scoutmaster of your boys. One
hmm
because you've been shopping at his dad's running store forever, and then me, this random kid that shows up in your living room, and we
hmm
throw open this pitch deck that was designed in old version of PowerPoint and just didn't look good. And here we are, and we're like, oh yeah, by the way, so we're gonna start a shoe company and go compete against Nike and Asics and Saucony and Adidas. Will you give us money?
Yeah.
And like the one thing that I remember from that conversation, and whether you had invested or not, like it left an impression on me that you were this optimistic, positive individual, and you talked about just barely how that was kind of at a moment of shift for you to where like, okay, you were getting jaded. There were some of these hard things. Do you mind kind of sharing what some of the stuff that you were like? I don't want you to get too personal if you don't feel comfortable, but sharing kind of what that was and then how you made that conscious mind shift to say, okay, I want to, I want to be positive. I want to act and not be acted upon.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. Because, I mean, there's a lot to it. I'll just kind of keep it fairly high level. But um, I've been brought up in a world. I was brought up by a father who and a mother. My mother was an immigrant from Italy. Came over post World War II to Canada. Met my father, and and we were brought up and born and raised in Canada. And my father was a person who was very optimistic for the most part. He would read books, self educated, read a lot of books. We grew up with books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill
Yeah.
and As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And this was just stuff that was in our, and Zig Ziglar was a pretty common experience for us growing up to jump in the car and my dad would have it. A Zig
These are all books I
Ziglar,
didn't find till college. And so
yeah,
this is great.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, and I just grew up with that and I thought that was kind of normal. And we had this kind of mindset of anything is possible. But much like in life, then I get on my own and I got to figure things out on my own. And suddenly things start to happen and you like, that's not easy. And you try to work through it. And just the process of life, like I said earlier, it just kind of starts to chip away. And then you get challenged. I get challenged. I started a company in early 2000, 2002 actually, and grew extremely well. That company's angle very, very well. And it was growing at a rapid pace. But then, and again, without going into all the details, just stuff starts to happen. When you grow a company, then things happen. Everything from, I mean, the way I describe it, and I've used this in terms in other ways when I've talked about it, it's like I was playing a full-time version of a real life version of whack-a-mole. It was just like whack, whack. I couldn't keep up with the amount of mole heads that were popping up, and I was young. I mean, I was trying to figure that out, and and again, without going into details, it was everything from prod challenges to trademark issues to investor issues to top salespeople sadly passing away to, I mean. An IT meltdown where it completely shut our company down for a week. I mean, these are just things that started piling. And then the 08, 09 crisis hit. And it affected businesses. And it didn't matter what business we were in. It
yeah.
would just affected business. And that started to really weigh heavy as a business owner. Without, again, going into all the details, just that was really tough. And I was feeling like life was happening to me. And I allowed it to to um, to help. I started to play the blame game. I started to do. And I didn't understand what was going on in my life. I'm like, wait a second. I was taught not to think this way. Like I was brought up, but I had to be challenged myself. I had to
Yeah.
go through it myself, and I don't know if there was any other way to be able to do that. And I've kind of been forgetting a lot of the things that I was taught growing up. So I was kind of forced into, as we all are in life, that just happens. And we can choose to, again, see that life is happening to us. And that's very a victim mentality. And that's what I was feeling. And it was happening to me at the same time trying to manage a business and a growing business and a challenged business at the time. And then, of course, raising a family too. We had 4 children, and my wife and I were raising a family and traveling the world. I was constantly in a state of jet lag. It was just all of the above. And so right around when did we start Alter? What year was it?
So Golden and I got together and I said, let's
2012?
start a shoe company in 2009. So
Okay.
right in the midst of those years, right? Those
Oh, it
recession
was right
years.
at that time. So,
And I think we finally sat in your living room probably spring of 2010 is probably when we first pitched this to you and Karen
mhm,
and then because our first running event was was that fall. And I remember us going to you and saying, hey, we've got this event. We think we should be there. And you were like, well, if you guys really think you should be there, let me know what it is and I'll write the check. And it was just like, okay, like here we go. The other thing that amazes me about you, right? Like there's from what you just said, I could pull a lot out of, right? Like we could talk for I think for hours about a lot of that content that you just shared. One of the things that's powerful to me there is that you had a foundation, right? And I think this goes to any of us that are parents. As we teach our children, what are we teaching them? What foundational principles are we laying down for our children? And then how, because because yes, they're going to be tested, they're going to be tried themselves, they're going to have to go through it themselves. And you mentioned that you forgot it, but it was still there, right? Like that
Mhm.
foundation's still laid down for you, and you can revert back to that. And so that
Mhm.
foundation of optimism, it still exists. It's just a little buried, right? And so that then can help you get through some of those challenges. And I think that's such an important parenting principle right there is what are we teaching our children? How are we laying down those foundations for them? But
Mhm.
as I look at what we did with Ultra, like we didn't even have an operating agreement in place until we'd been partnered and you'd been funding us for at least 6 months. Like this was all a handshake deal, and that's the kind of person you are, Joe. And I think you saw that in us as well. It was like, okay, you know what? Like I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to take a flyer on these guys because I think what they're doing innovative, it's different, and here we go. And I don't think you get enough credit as being considered a founder. Brian and I have talked about this a lot, right? Like Joe Morton is the fourth founder. It's Jeremy, Brian, Golden, and Joe, right? Like, and in no specific order, right? Like Ultra wouldn't exist without any of the four of us. And Ultra
Okay.
now is going to do a couple $100 million
I
in a
know.
year, and it's amazing to sit back and say, okay, this thing launched in 2011, just 13 years ago. It's now owned by VF Corp, and here we go, right? But a lot of that, like as much as it falls on Golden, on me, on Brian, it also falls on you because your optimistic energy and what you brought to the table. Because the three of us had very little business experience. Like, yeah, okay, Brian and Golden have managed retail shops, but that's a lot different than
Mhm.
starting and launching a global brand. And I'd worked as a financial investor, done some small startup stuff, but nothing to that point. And so your business acumen came in huge to help us really set the foundation of what we were going to be. And it all played off of your energy and your optimism, right? Like that positive attitude of like, okay, we're going to go do this, right? Like you got us thinking and believing that we were going to be bigger than Saucony. We were going to be bigger than Brooks. Like we were going to go compete with these big boys. And if anybody asked us what, like, how big do you see Ultra? That's what we would say. Like, we weren't just going to be some boutique shoe brand. So, yeah,
I
thank you
love it.
for that, Joe. Right?
It
Like,
was it was amazing,
it's a
and
fun.
it is amazing.
It is
You know.
amazing, and it was a fun
Hmm.
ride while we were there. Right? Like, both of us
Yeah.
aren't involved with the brand directly anymore. We maybe pull Brian's ear, who's still over there, and try and
I'm wearing the hat though.
rocking the
Like.
hat. I'm always wearing the shoes, right? Like
Yeah. Oh
up you a
yeah.
pair.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Totally.
Like, so, but so you talk about your foundation, you talk about this mind shift that happened while you're kind of struggling in business, and as you look at, like, that's what also impresses me, right? Because you talk about how hard 2008 2009 were for you in business, and yet personally you were like, okay, like I'll take on this financial burden of funding this startup shoe company. And that wasn't some small sum. Like I don't know what the exact number ended up to be, but it was roughly a $500,000 at least. And like that's a big investment. Like that was from your personal piggy bank in a
Hmm.
time when your other business isn't overly flourishing. It's like you're struggling, there's a lot of challenges and these things, and you're like, okay, I'll just write the checks. Like here you go. Like that's amazing. Like
Hmm.
what gave you, like when you saw Ultra, what was it that really stood out to you, and why did you and Karen, I gotta include her in this, right? Like because
Oh yeah.
she's right there. Like she would have let you wrote the, like that was one thing that I remember you said, okay, like let Karen and I talk about this,
Hmm.
and we'll make a decision. And I love that, right? Like it was both of you. Your investments are always both of you, and so she could be included in this should be included in this
Hmm.
conversation just as well. So, but what was it that like you were like, okay, let's go take this risk?
Well, I loved the innovation of it. I loved, it's just something different. It's a different way. And the story, if you recall, when you guys were getting me involved in it, it was going back to the basics of running and the basics of running mechanics
Yep.
and and I had struggled with all the injuries that you guys were listing at the time, consistently struggling with them, and I couldn't quite understand why. And as I started to change um, the mechanics of my running, um, which started with a lot of that barefoot running phase that was going. I call it a phase, but it was a very important stage in the process of ultra starting because people were starting to step back and say, "Wait a second, we've been running wrong. Look at the way people have been running, like the Born to Run book talks about
For sure.
with McDougall. This is how people have been, as a human race, we've been running like this for thousands of the beginning of time, and we've just kind of lost it. If you look at the period of time that we've been on this earth as a human race is ginormous, and it's like this much that we've been running with running shoes. Maybe we could adjust that a little bit, you know?
Yep.
And when I heard that story, and the story is powerful, it's real, it's true, and then the whole golden, like, working, like people coming to him and he was like chopping up shoes. I'm like, man, this is the greatest story ever. This is like amazing. And I had faith in you guys. I mean, Brian, as you mentioned, was my son's scoutmaster, and I got to. In fact, I was just in the mountains with Brian. He took me and my boys, my three boys. It was like amazing. We went up into the Uintas, and it was right close to where I met him. I mean, I knew him because he was in my neighborhood, um, but that was when I saw him come out of the mountains for the first time. I'm like, what is this guy doing? Like, because I was sitting around a campfire as a dad. I was just up there supporting the scouts as a dad, and he comes running out, and he had just run like 18 or 20 miles. I'm like, who is this guy? What? Holy macro! And so I had faith that you guys knew what you're doing. Of course, Golden too. I mean, I've been buying shoes from his store, his family store, for many years prior
Right.
to that, and so I had faith in, like, these guys know what they're doing. Like, if anyone's gonna start a shoe company, I mean, this group is the one that's gonna do it. And I love the story. I love the story about foot shape. I love the story about zero drop. I love the story about female specific last. I loved all of it. It was like it made so much sense to me. And look where it's gone, you know?
Yeah.
An
Absolutely.
entrepreneur, and I'm a dreamer. You're a dreamer, Jeremy. We're dreamers, um, and I like the process of dreaming. I like to be able to see. Entrepreneurs can see something that others can't see, and you guys were seeing something that as we couldn't see at the time because all we could see is what's out there in the stores.
Yeah. Like
and
everything you talk about,
and you
right? Like
guys were
it's
seeing stuff that I didn't see, and then I'm like, whoa, they're opening up my eyes to stuff I didn't know was needed. Let's do this thing. That's kind of what it comes down to. And I have faith and belief in you guys, faith and belief in your abilities, faith and belief in your dream, in this idea, faith and belief in your abilities as well as runners and what you were experienced in your lives growing up. And heck, Brian, for when the first shoe, the first trail shoe came off, just from a testing, he went and ran like 100 miles, and he ran like
he
the
ran the Wasatch 100 in that
Wasatch
first
100 in it. Like,
yeah in that
that's
first
faith
test
and
sample.
belief in your product. That's faith and belief in your dream. That's why I invested.
It was also the first time he ever run 100 miles without any blisters, which is impressive. That
Yeah.
it was a sample shoe, and it was right
Mm-hmm.
off. It was essentially right off the line, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think he'd done a few other runs in it before, but nothing to that extent, right? So,
The Lone
yeah, no,
Peak, the
that's
first
awesome,
lone first
Joe.
Lone
Like,
Peak. That's why, guys. I mean,
yeah,
you guys had so much passion and faith in what you were doing. That is powerful.
yeah, I've got a pair that sits on my shelf right here just to kind of pay homage to that experience. Like I
Hmm.
loved that shoe. The original Instinct was phenomenal, right? Like those two shows that we came out with, like we hit it out of the park. Design was not the prettiest, but like those shoes went over 1,000 miles a pair. Brian and I were talking like how impressive is that to get like consistently? It wasn't just a few, right? Like it was awesome. But the story you tell, like it puts me back into the family room at Golden's house. Like Golden and I, right? Like we're cousins, and I was over there just taught like I needed a new pair of running shoes. He went through that whole story, right? Like kind of the whole
Hmm.
thing, and he'd been hacking up shoes, and he said, "Try these," and I said, "Great. What are you gonna do with this?" And says, "Well, we'll just keep hacking up shoes down at the running store for people that need them." And I said,
Hmm.
"Well, let's start a shoe company." And when he stopped laughing at me, I said, "No, I'm serious." And then it was a few months later, right? Like we sat down with our design with a potential design team that we ended up using, and then we sat down with you and Karen, and then here it is today, right? Like, and it's amazing, right? Like you talk about being a dreamer, and I think that plays into positivity, right? Like because so often the world wants to squelch our dreams. It wants to push us down. It wants to take those things away from us. And to what we talked about before there is this need to make a conscious effort to being optimistic, to being positive, and to seeking to continue to dream. And we can do whatever we want as long as we can dream it, right? Like as long as we
Absolutely.
can go for it.
Absolutely. I believe that, again, going back to that earlier statement, the process of life can squanch our dreams. It can destroy our desire to move forward, or it can propel us. And I believe that when we stop dreaming, it's kind of like the beginning of the end, Jeremy. Then we just exist. And I think as human beings, we're meant to dream. Like, look at what we depend on people dreaming all around
Absolutely.
us.
Absolutely.
Everywhere we go, we depend. Just take the economy. We depend on entrepreneurs who are dreamers, crazy dreamers who have been told that's not possible. We depend on them on a daily basis. You
Well, you
know?
look at everything we're using right now to record this podcast, right? Like, and the fact that we're podcasting, like, it all
Yep.
hinges off of somebody's dreams, right?
Yes.
So
Exactly.
talk to us about like, is there something or some things that you do every day that are conscious things that you put forth in your daily routine to help you stay positive?
Yes. Daily gratitude. I start every day with gratitude.
What does that look like for you?
Number one on my list, my wife, Karen. And then I go through my children, Caden, Ethan, Nathan, and my daughter, Kelsey. I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for the mountains. Like I'm like staring out my window. Look at we live here,
I
Jeremy. I
know
mean,
it's
it's
pretty.
incredible.
Well, I'm looking.
Uh,
I live right off a Utah lake, and I'm looking right at the lake right now. It's like,
Also
and
gorgeous.
there's a mountain back there behind it, and there's. I was up on Timp last week, and it's a whole nother story we can get into later. But,
Oh my gosh.
but
Like
it's
every day, like I'm
yeah,
looking at Cascade right now. This is absolutely gorgeous.
yeah,
And I'm grateful for uh, my body, for example, everything that happens. It's like a complete miracle. Try to live life uh, in awe, you know, in awe. I had a person on my podcast recently that's what his message is. I mean, he was doing a tour in Colombia, and at the time, and so he called in from Colombia, and it was kind of neat because um, he just talked about that's his whole tour. It was about awe, living life in awe, and like
yeah,
everything's a wonder, everything is a miracle, you know. And right now, it's a magical time of year. Right now, our leaves are green, but man, in a week and a half to 2 weeks, they're going to start changing color, and that
yep.
awe, that gratitude to experience that is amazing, and that gets me through. Okay, so that's you wanted to ask about how I start my day. Gratitude,
But
love,
so
love
I
is
want to hang on gratitude for a second here. So you listed off a lot of the things that you are grateful for. But like your daily practice of gratitude, is that journaling? Is that just sitting outside? Is it prayer? Is it meditation? Like what does that look like as you give thanks, as you show gratitude each morning?
kind of all of the above, Jeremy.
Okay.
prayer, of course, is a way to be able to express gratitude. And that's a part of my prayer.
Yeah.
Um, Meditation, gratitude meditations, just trying to find it, and then try to find things to be grateful for when I walk out the door, and like just stop for a moment. Like I was golfing last night. It was kind of late in the evening. It was almost dark. I was with my buddy Roger, and I actually posted. And so you ask about, do you journal? Sometimes I do. I do. I actually will post it on Instagram just for fun. So that's a form of journaling, you know?
Yeah.
And it was just, I'm watching him about ready to hit. I got uh, Kai Peak, or what's formerly known as Sweat Peak, right in the background there. I got these dark, ominous clouds, and like, it was like crazy. And there's thunder going on. There's like rumbling. And then I just it was wild because I come around the tree and there's like a freaking rainbow. It was like amazing, you know,
It's
those
awesome.
kind of things. Can we pause? You know, you hear those terms, stop and smell the roses. That's really what that is stopping and just trying to find the awe and the wonder in everything that's around us. We have a full moon. I think it's tonight. I
Yeah.
mean, can we pause and just recognize the miracle that that full moon is?
Well,
That's
my
a form
daughter,
of that's a form
yeah,
of gratitude, right, Jeremy? I mean,
absolutely.
just going, whoa, this thing is like controlling like the tides, and it's controlling even moods. I think it affects people's moods, like everything. Like, wow, this thing is, and it's like some special, like super blue moon or so. I don't know what it is. It's like some special. They're always special. They're always something special. Anyways,
Yeah.
sorry, your daughter.
No, you're
What?
great. That I love that. I love the living in awe, right? Like I love like taking that as a premise for our day, right? Whatever we're doing. But you speak of the moon, right? Last night my daughter calls me into her room. She's like, "Dad, I can't sleep because there's like this like beam of light shining right in my window because of the moon." It was like perfect,
Mhm.
right? Like it was like there's like a flashlight shining in, and now it's this beautiful awe. My wife and I were out on a walk. I think it was Sunday night as there was the storm clouds off to the west and the sun was setting, and you had like five different shades: orange, pink, purple. Like it was all there, and
Incredible.
it was phenomenal. And it was like, okay, like I can't capture this quite with my iPhone, and I left my good camera at the house, and but it was beautiful, right? Like, and it's just those moments of awe. And so okay, so back to kind of your daily, so gratitude through
Hmm.
meditation, prayer, just giving thanks, being in awe. Then
Yeah,
what else?
and try to have that take me through the rest of the day, you know. And
Yeah,
I'm not going to tell you, Jeremy, that I'm perfect at this. I mean, I have to work
I
at it.
don't know
Like I
that
said
none of
in the
us are, right?
beginning of
Like,
the, like I said at the beginning, I work on this, you know. But I find that that really helps me. I just did an event a couple of weeks ago, James Lawrence's event, and there were moments while I was in that event that I was struggling, and I would try to shift from the struggle to, whoa, I'm in a part of Utah I haven't seen before, or if I know I've seen this, well, it's been a many
well,
years, you know, and
I
I'm like, whoa. And at one point, Jeremy, I'm like grinding up, what's that pass?
Scotts Hill.
No, it's,
Oh, up Guardsman Pass on your bike. Up
not
Guardsman.
guardsman. It was the one
Yeah.
before it. Anyways, I'm grinding up this thing, and I'm like, "Argh." And I
Okay.
look to my right, and there's freaking mountain goats, right? Like they were just right on this cliff. It was weird. I guess it was just kind of like they were just there, standing on a cliff that's probably this wide.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey guys," you know. And I just
That's
kept on
awesome.
going, and it was just really kind of special. Now, were they mountain goats? I assume. I don't know. I was kind of in a daze state, you know. Um, but it was just this magical moment. Like there's freaking goats hanging on a cliffside right to my right of me,
Yeah.
and then looking over and I'm watching like the tops of a mountain over here, and I'm just like, this is really cool.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome. You did a
I
podcast
get to
episode
do
talking
this.
all
So you
about that.
change
So,
from I have to do this, then that gratitude changes from I have to do this to I get to do this. It's a complete shift, you
yeah.
know? It's living in gratitude. So, anyways,
No, I love that. I love that mind shift, right? Like being able to say, okay, like instead of I have to, right? I get to experience this. you shared your on your podcast all about your X-Tri experience, right? Like,
Hmm.
and at one moment on your run, so after you'd gotten to Solitude, I guess you guys go run up to 9990 and then across
Hmm.
Scotts Hill, and the storm came in and you weren't prepared for this storm, right?
Hmm.
And I remember you talking about like, okay, we just got to find a cabin. Let's just go knock on their door
Hmm.
and get warm and dry
Hmm.
and even in the midst of that, right? Like lost in the mountains, kind of concerned for your warmth and how are we going to get down to the road? Like you were probably still a mile or well, probably 2 to 3 miles at least
Yeah, pretty close to 3 miles from the
from the
truck.
road. Yeah. So if you
Hmm.
were up still on the ridge, probably about three and a half. And there's just this like, okay, like I just got to keep moving, right?
Hmm.
And at one point, I think you said somebody offered you a ride or something, and you were just like, no, we're just gonna keep moving. I don't recall that exactly what that was, but I just love the perseverance and the intention to like, okay, like we're gonna complete this. We just got to keep moving, and that'll keep us warm, and then we'll complete this.
Yeah, and that goes to a really important point in life that for me I've learned and I continue to be reminded of it, and that is we become there's that statement, and I don't know exactly who said this originally, but we become the sum total of the five people we hang out with most. And so be careful who we hang out with because they are going to either take us down and not be supportive of us accomplishing our dreams, or they're going to help push us to our dreams.
Yeah.
And I was surrounded by my two boys, Ethan and Caden, and they were both very positive, very optimistic. Um, I was shivering uncontrollably. Ethan was in control. He was like, "Hey, we're going to do this." And then Caden and my buddy Ryan met us at that point. You were talking about probably about 2.5 miles to 3 miles to the truck, and they had warm weather gear for me, and I jumped in. And I got to the truck, and I was done. I was done. No more. I'm like, I'm giving this. I've given this a good go. This has been nice. I'm pretty sure that the thing's canceled, but I thought the event was canceled because of the weather. But nope. And James believed in me, and when I called him, which I was not, you sometimes you want people to not believe in you. You want them to say, "Hey, you can
give
quit. Go ahead and quit."
give me
I'm looking for
permission to
someone.
let go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking for someone to give me permission. My wife, she's like, "You got this." I'm like, "No." My daughter, my boys, my buddy Ryan, James. I'm like, they're not going to let me give up on this, and I'm so grateful that they didn't. That they didn't give up on me. You know.
No, I appreciate that a lot, right? Like I've been on the crew side of these events a lot, right? And unfortunately my wife's
Oh,
had to
your wife?
DNF. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
had to DNF a few races, right?
she's done a lot of
It's
races.
really hard as crew to decide, okay, like where do I push and say, okay, no, you got this, and I say, okay, no, it's time to call it. And
Hmm.
I in my mind and where I've kind of come to is if it's just a I'm ornery, I'm tired, I'm like I don't want to do this anymore, then it's okay, get your butt out there and go finish, right? But if it's a physical injury thing, which unfortunately it has been for her last few DNFs,
That's a little
um,
different.
yeah, it's different, right? Like it's like okay, like if that's flaring up that bad, I think it's
Hmm.
time we call it. And that's a
For
really
sure.
hard thing for her because she's not a quitter, right? Like,
She's a
and the first
beast.
place her mind goes is like, what are the kids gonna think of me? And I'm like, they're
Hmm.
not gonna think any less of you. You went out and did
Hmm.
75 miles. You made it to
Hmm.
Brighton in Wasatch
Hmm.
100, right? Like, or you went and did UTMB and you crushed 70 miles,
Yeah.
but yeah, that last 30 is not going to happen, unfortunately. But the last thing you want is to hurt yourself to the point where like you can't do it ever again.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so, but it is like it's an interesting thing as crew because sometimes it's 2 in the morning and you're just like, I'm tired. I'd
Hmm.
love to just get off this mountain and go to bed. But where do I like, okay, do I be supportive? Do I push? Do I like,
Hmm.
or, and so, no, that's great, right? Like to have those there that are like, no, you got this. But yes,
Hmm.
internally, sometimes we're like, please just give me permission to
Yeah.
call it. Like,
Hmm.
Like, just
Yep,
give me an
and
excuse
I'm
to get
willing to
off of here.
admit that, Jeremy, that I've had those moments. You
Yeah,
feel those, you feel like that, and that's why in life such a good important principle to do surround ourselves. If anyone's listening to this and you're like, well, I'm going into this, whatever this is, I don't know, choose whatever hat you're wearing. If it's your personal journey for your health and wellness, maybe you want to lose weight, or maybe you're going into an event, or maybe it's a business venture, whatever it is, really consider the people you're surrounding yourself with. Are they going to support you through that, and help you through whatever you're going through, is it's always been such an important part. And that's why I say my gratitude, like right off the bat, my wife is right up there every day, because
yeah.
she's always there supporting me and my craziness, my crazy dreams. And
No, that's great. That's good. It's good to have somebody there constantly on your side, right? Like, so you've had all of this success. You've seen a lot of things. You talked about some of the hard moments, but what would you say is your greatest failure?
I don't know what a greatest failure. I'm not sure. I will say this: the failure, we need to have a different relationship with failure, I think,
Yeah,
because failure really is a way to be able to grow and develop and become who we're meant to become if we use it as stepping stones.
absolutely.
Failure tends to be too quick to give up. And you know, I will tell you one, and what's my greatest one? I don't know. I fail all the time, so it's a
That's
part of
fair.
life. It's part of my life because I push myself out of my comfort zone all the time,
Yeah,
Jeremy. I try to, at least. I try to. I had one that I will say that one that I'm reminded of every single day of my life at this point is I broke my leg and my ankle pretty seriously 1 week before an Ironman, actually, before an iron distance event. It wasn't technically an Ironman, but
yeah,
it's called the Great Floridian and in Florida. I was 1 week before. And I say I'm reminded of it because when I broke my leg, those heal pretty quick, but I also broke my ankle. It just blew right out of like just,
yeah,
and I was dirt biking. And I didn't grow up on dirt bikes. It was relatively new. I got them for me and my boys. We were just having fun. I was with my buddy, and he had three boys. I had three boys. We're about the same age, and we were dirt biking. And I was just in typical fashion trying to push myself out of, push, 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 push. And I pushed probably a little bit too hard on this one, and I overshot a jump. And of course, it's the last run of the day. It's dark out, and I landed wrong and just blew my ankle out. I say I'm reminded of that failure, and of course, I mean, one could say that's definitely a failure. I failed to make that. I'm reminded of it because my ankle has never been the same,
yeah.
and it I've got so much scar tissue built up in that it just doesn't move the weight. So when I go up when I have to climb something high, I have to do it at a certain angle. It's like I'm constantly reminded of it.
That
When I wake up
26
in the
miles in X-Tri was not easy then. That was
No,
not
no,
easy.
no. When I wake up in the morning, I kind of do this kind of a little bit skip, so I'm reminded of it every day of my life, and every time I run, for example,
Yeah,
I'm feel it. I ran yesterday with my son, and ran over the weekend with my other son, um, and so when I run, I feel it all the time. But they were good learning experiences because, like, when my orthopedic surgeon, after I broke it, I asked him, can I do it? Will I be able to run again? And his comment was, yeah, I mean, you're going to run, but you're probably not going to be running marathons. And you're probably not going to be doing an Iron. I said, can I do this Ironman next year? He's like, oh, I don't remember how he put it, but it was kind of like, you're a dreamer, man. Because that means you're a year out, and I'm not even going to walk on the thing for 2 months.
yeah.
No. Well, I got the cast off in 2 months. Then you don't even walk for another month. So now I'm down to 7 months to train for this thing. But I found a physical therapist who believed in it. He was an Ironman. He believes in it. Believed in my abilities. Heath was my coach, and he believed in me, and I ended up doing that Ironman the year later, and it was very difficult. And so, but it was a good learning experience to depend on others who know how to coach through something like this. Depend on others who believe in me, and depend on experts, and believe in yourself. Have belief in yourself. Faith is so important, so very important. And and then now, again, I'm kind of reminded of it all the time. So I just
Yeah.
have to adjust things now. So I have to just do things differently. And so, like Michael Jordan says, I'm paraphrasing it. He's like, if there's an obstacle in front of you, you either go around it, or you go under it, or over it, or through the darn thing. So, how bad do we want it? And so I'm reminded of that failure all the time. What's ahead of me? I don't know, Jeremy. I'm not sure. Am I going to get arthritis? I don't know. But if I
Yeah.
am, I'm going out with a friggin' bang. You know what I mean?
Yep. Not gonna let it take you down, take you off
So
your
you just
goals and your
learn from
dreams.
it, you know, you,
Yeah.
you, you work around it and you learn from it. And so it doesn't shatter your dreams. It just adjusts it. You just adjust. You say, okay, I'm gonna, so anyways, hopefully that makes sense what I just said.
No, that's awesome, and I love the concept of changing our mindset on failure, right? Like, and I agree, because we're never a failure unless we completely give up, right?
Mhm.
We're gonna fail all the time. We should expect that, right? Like, and that's okay. But use to your point, use them as stepping stones to greater successes. So what would you say is your greatest accomplishment?
Oh,
Again, I'm using the
primary.
word greatest, and you might
Yeah.
not have them ranked, but
You know, I'll just go back to at the top of my list, always my gratitude, my wife. I would say that's my greatest accomplishment because I'm a pretty good salesman, Jeremy. I was able to land my wife. She's incredible. She's always been an incredible support to me, and I just think did I have a great life before her? Yeah, of course. I mean, I grew up in a loving family. I had great siblings, and I played hockey and baseball, and I had a great. So I don't want to take away from that. But again, you're talking the greatest. I think because from there, I've just had so many wonderful. I just think of all these incredible memories that we built together, and we brought 4 children into the world.
yeah,
Her, I gotta give. Well, I had the easy part. She's the one that had to do that. But I think of all the, as I built Zango, um, I mean, I traveled perpetually. Even before Zango, I just lived on the road, and that put a lot of burden on her. And so I'm grateful that she was able to take that burden on and always be there supporting me along the way. And so I just think of, and I believe I have a great future with different, of what I'm working on in my life. And so, I mean, she's my rock. And so I would say that's my greatest accomplishment, I guess. I would say
that's
marrying
awesome.
my wife,
No, I love it.
uh,
I love it.
you know,
Well,
because everything good came from there. You know what I mean?
yeah, yep, absolutely. Like
I
everything
mean,
ties to
heck,
that.
we just had a wedding this summer, and so now I have a daughter-in-law,
That
and
looked
she's
so fun.
incredible,
That
and her
looked so
family's
fun.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
and her family's incredible, and again, that came from marrying my wife. So I don't know. That's my thoughts.
No, that's great. Well, I've got a handful of rapid fire questions. I
Yeah.
say rapid fire because I'll fire them at you, but you can take as long as you want to answer them.
Okay.
You can give brief answers or long answers. It's up to you. But first, what frightens you?
I think, what frightens me would be taking on something well, the unknown. I think just the unknown. And does it frighten me? Well, yeah, I think nobody's immune to fear,
Right.
Jeremy. Like, no, and I'm not immune to fear. I can tell you that right now. I think some people think, "Whoa, you guys done all these Ironmans." No, and I've climbed mountains, yeah. But it kind of frightens me when I go out of my comfort zone so much. To use that example of James's event that just took place a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I mean, a week and a half ago. It frightened me, to do something to push myself especially at my age. Like, I'm going to push myself to this level, and what's over there? I don't quite know because this is a pretty tough event. That was one of the toughest ones, or the one that I did with Sean. You know Sean Christian. I mean,
Yep.
when I did that ski race with Sean, completely unknown. I mean, that was like that kind of stuff frightens me. But I do that because in the frightening, we're to overcome our fears. It's like Mark Twain says, do the thing you fear the most and the death of fear is certain. So if I'm putting myself in a fearful place that frightens me of the unknown of what could happen or could I fail, like that. Then in the doing, then we crush those fears and we become more of who we're meant to be in the process, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No,
So
I love it.
I think putting myself in a situation, and I will do more. I will. And those moments in the overcoming of the fear, um, I feel like it's helping chip away at who I'm meant to become in life. I say meant to become. I mean, I'm 54 years old and I'm still growing, still developing, still becoming more of who I'm meant to become, Jeremy. I believe I'm just really getting started.
Love it. Love it. What inspires you?
Um, I so many things inspire me. Dude, you asked me about my morning routine. One of the morning routines is I like to find social media where there's stories that just are so inspiring. I love that. And I love that, and I'll use that. Uh, and interesting that as you seek more of those, the algorithms change and they start sending you more of that stuff. And I
Yeah.
like it. I like the inspiration comes with reading. I have this sitting on my desk at all times, As a Man Thinketh, by James Allen. Reading good material. I have this sitting on my desk because I refer to it regularly. I've read it many, many, many times in the past, and I just refer to it. And so that inspires me. The people I hang out with inspire me. My wife, my children inspire me and what they go through on a daily basis and what they're working towards. And again, my friends inspire me. My friends' stories inspire me. Um, and so I try to surround myself with those people that will inspire me. And so, including people I've never met before, but through social media, there's a lot of great stories out there
Yeah.
that are
Awesome.
very inspirational. So, listening to audiobooks, I listen to audiobooks, I listen to podcasts. I love podcasts. So much inspiration. I'm reading a book right now by Elon Musk, about Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson.
Okay. Yeah.
Holy macro, such an inspirational story. I'm very early on in the book right now, but so inspiring. Like, that's incredible. And books like, I just finished a book recently, within the last half a year or so, called The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. Like, incredible. That stuff inspires me when I start to, yeah. So, anyways, a lot of stuff inspires me. I try to find things on a daily basis that are going to inspire me because, well, man, if not, gravity's going to pull us away, to
Yep.
the negative in life. And so,
No, I love that. I love looking for inspirational stories, right? Like making a concerted effort to flip the algorithm because
hmm
so much the algorithm can feed us negative stuff, but we can flip it,
hmm
right? So
yep,
it's the stuff that we ingest, the stuff that we engage with, spend most time with. You already
yep,
answered two of my next questions. What are you reading right now? I love Walter Isaacson. I think he does a phenomenal job. I love his
incredible.
biographies. I haven't read the Elon Musk one yet. I need to pull that one up. And then my next question would have been, what book have you read in the past 12 to 18 months that you would highly recommend to others? Um,
That one,
so
let me tell you,
the
so
comfort
good.
crisis.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, change the way. Okay, there's this quote by uh, Dr. Wayne Dyer where he says, change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. I love that. Change
Yeah.
the way you look at things and the things you look at change. And Michael Easter helped me look at uh, the comfort that we have in life and look at difficult things differently. And it's okay to be out of our comfort zone. Now, I always kind of believe that. Of course, we understand that growth takes place out of the comfort zone, but it's always great when you get a good author that can just help you to go, oh my gosh, I'm seeing it a little differently. And so I like to manufacture uncomfortableness a little bit so that it
Yeah.
helps me to grow. Anyways, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. What gives you hope for the future?
Humans. I mean, just look around and you see these really good people out there with optimistic views of the future. And um, there's a great book called Abundance, and the book starts off with this really interesting approach where it's like all this negative stuff, negative, all the news that you would generally see, because if you just turn on your news,
Yeah.
you're going to see it, or I mean, just a lot of negativity. Um, and now this book was written like, I don't know, 14 years ago, 12,
That's
14
Peter
years ago.
Diamandis,
So
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Peter
I
Diamandis,
love Peter
phenomenal.
Diamandis. Yeah, he's fantastic.
This book is
Yeah.
so good. But then it shifts, and then he's like, but here's the thing. And then the rest of the book is, if we have an abundant mentality, there's solutions all over the place.
Yeah.
And the great people of the world, there are so many great thinkers in this world. It's incredible. And that's why I'm reading Elon Musk right now, because I believe he's one of those great thinkers. In fact, back in the day when that book was written, he even highlighted Elon back then. And I
Yeah.
just like the viewpoint that, hey, solutions are out there. We're going to find those solutions because there's always a way, you know? And so I think there's great humans out there with incredible minds, and to see it, and you see it around us. Just go out and yeah, there's negative stuff going on and negative people, but there's a lot of good, man. There's a lot of good.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wrote an article for my Substack that I'll post here soon, and or might be posted by the time this releases. But I quoted Peter Diamandis, and because I love his statement, if you want to make $1 billion, help a billion people, right?
Mm,
And there's so many problems in the world today that we could solve, and just by solving those problems, we'll make a lot of people a lot of money, right? And
yeah.
it's just having the energy, having the optimism, having the dreamer mentality to go solve those. So awesome.
hmm
What is something that you would want to tell your 18-year-old self?
I would say, wow, there's so many things, Jeremy. That's like one of those ones like, what do you put your
Like,
finger on? But I
could
think,
I write a whole like book and hand it to my
oh
18-year-old
yeah,
self and make
of
myself
course,
read it, right?
of course. I would think to remember to live in the moment, that the past is the past, it's done, over. And oftentimes we live in the past too much and we rehash it. Oh, I failed this, I didn't do this right. And we just rehash it over and over and over again, reliving it constantly, putting us into that state where we're reliving the past, or living in the future of what could go wrong, all the
Hmm.
while forgetting that this is the moment. Like right now, that you and I are in this very moment. This is our moment,
Yeah.
and and so I think that would be one thing, because I've been victim of that. Uh, Victim's not the right word. I've done that a lot in my life,
Right.
and I strive not to do that. The past is the past. Leave it alone. You can learn from it if you want to learn from it. Great, but just don't rehash it. And try not to be worried too much about what could go wrong.
Yeah. No,
Instead of
that's
just
great.
live in the moment. And then the other thing is, there's always a way. There's always a way, and to remind ourselves and to remember there's always a solution. So don't get too overworked up about that, because there's always a way.
Awesome. You've traveled a lot. You've been all over the place, but do you have a favorite place you've traveled to and
You
why?
know, I would say there's probably carve up the world. I have seen a lot of the world, and it's a beautiful place. I'm just going to tell you right now, beautiful place with beautiful people and
Yeah.
beautiful cultures and beautiful, That's why I changed my Instagram handle to "Oh, the places you'll run," because I started to run everywhere and it was kind of fun. But
Yeah.
I'd say in Asia, Thailand. Love Thailand. I love the people of Thailand. I love the food, first of all. But I love the people. They're so beautiful, always smiling, um, and seem to be quite at peace with life. And it's a peaceful place to be for me. And I really, really enjoyed Thailand and Europe. I think Italy because I have Italian roots. My mother
Sure.
was born and raised north of Venice, and I still have a lot of family over there. And I just love the peace of being in Italy. I feel like it's literally like part of my heritage, and I really well, and it is, and I just love it. Plus, the food's amazing. Hello, I
Yeah,
mean,
it is.
Italian food's incredible.
Best pizza I ever had was in Courmayeur, just on the other side of Chamonix, and
Mm,
it was phenomenal. It was so good.
mm, yum.
But that's awesome. I think we could keep going. We could have a long conversation here. We could make this episode 2 to 3 times longer. We just start opening books and start talking and philosophical. We could have a lot of fun here. But my last question is, Joe, how do people find you?
Um, you could find me. I have two Instagrams. I have the places you'll run, and that's kind of like a personal Instagram I've had for a long time. But I also have a podcast it's called a Cup of Joe podcast. There were a couple other Cup of Joes out there, so I had to add the podcast at the end. A Cup of Joe podcast, and I have an Instagram, a Cup of Joe podcast as well. And so I post on there regularly and daily, and that's kind of what the best places to follow me. And again, that Cup of Joe podcast is relatively new, less than a year old, but continue to add to it. Have great, incredible guests, and I'm honored to be on yours, Jeremy. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much, and we'll just honored to be here. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. We'll have to do this again. It was a pleasure. I love your optimism. I love the positive outlook that you have on life. I've fought like I've followed you on Instagram for a long time. I've seen you on stage from some of your posts and stuff that you've shared, and like just knowing you, having started a company with you, right? Like, you're an inspiration. You've been successful in many ways, but worked through a lot of those failures, a lot of those challenges to get there. And so I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate you kind of giving us some guidance and helping us answer some curiosities about how we can be a little more positive and the things that we can do in our daily lives to be a little more positive. So again, I thank you, Joe. It was a privilege.
Hey, thank you, Jeremy. It was an honor. Have a great day.